It's hard to predict in times of crisis whether drastic actions taken to shatter the normalization of mediocrity might end up bringing something worse in their wake. And yes, I'm talking about revolutions. This is the tightrope Dread Delusion walks on. In Dread Delusion, the population lives suspended in purgatory. In the Endless Realm, neither fully alive nor fully dead. In the Clockwork Kingdom, neither human nor machine. In Hollowshire, stuck in a transition that fundamentally changed nothing with the apostatic union. Spiritually and physically floating, the people wait for something to ignite a true transformation, hovering in the skies, frozen in time and space. They long for what might return them to solid ground, to reality, to reclaim it. The narratives woven across the Oniric Isles follow this same thread. Bleak, stripped-down societies clinging to the last shreds of reason, terrified of a sudden upheaval that could topple everything and, in doing so, rekindle hope. Throughout our journey in the game, we are faced with decisions of this nature. Do we deactivate the Clockwork King or restore him? Do we risk the world's end by seizing the cradle or leave things as they are? As a prisoner, we're recruited to do the Apostatic Union's bidding. Obviously with no pay, just a promise that we'll be let go in case of success. The task is to give chase to a rebel who previously worked for them. We're basically slave soldiers, exploited by them. Not exactly a great first impression. We're released into the solemn world of the Oniric Isles with its mushroom forests and misplaced colors, the red sky and the blue vegetation and the very gentle and simple classical music loop accompanying us. Melancholy is a big part of the vibe, and it also transpires through the zombie lives most people have in this world. We learn how, after a great war between the Apostatic Union and some old gods, some territories are wilting. You see, the old gods, through their middleman, the Wiccans, made contracts with the people where they provided all kinds of divine intervention, whereas humans were also expected to fulfill their part of the deal, which meant they might have to provide human sacrifices, but sometimes other side effects like suffering eternal pain or becoming quote-unquote monstrous. The gods were defeated, some were killed and some were incarcerated, which is not something very godlike. I feel like here the game plays a bit with the notion of prejudice. When you hear the name God, the Apostatic Union consider themselves atheists, so they must be the good guys fighting to free everyone from the gods' exploitation, right? As we learn more about the world, we realize reality isn't quite that simple. As I mentioned before, the gods performed certain tasks for the humans, like guaranteeing bountiful harvests so they could eat. They asked for a price, a human sacrifice. Someone needed to die. With the end of the God era, on the other hand, hunger has spread across the country as the crops have been dying. You'll find plenty of people suffering from this, while the Apostatic Union has started to impose taxes on the population, and some of their higher members look very comfortable in life. As we progress, we also cross paths with multiple gods and see what they're like. According to some sources we have access to in the game, the gods are beings that have no internal organs, just a nucleus that is vital to them, and they feed on worship. Not that classical, all-powerful gods are much better in that regard, but the reality we find in relation to the gods paints them more like beings that are only very powerful. We find out they're actually dependent on worship for their survival, and that they can be chained and incarcerated. Sure, the human sacrifices they demanded were extremely violent, but they're also slaves of the worshipping. The way the game lets us make our own conclusions plays with our own prejudices as we hear the Apostatic Union talk about the oppression the old gods inflicted on the populace, creating this tyrannical picture of them in our mind. till we find one literally chained in a cave like any other human, or Danu, a small godlet that is completely inoffensive. Besides, the game starts right out of the bat playing with the very grey notions of what might be better for most. A world where food isn't a problem but people need to be sacrificed for this to materialize, or a world ruled by a highly hierarchical and oppressive organization where crops are destined to never grow and villages are abandoned to be ransacked by people who have little choice but to embrace banditism. We find people with very different opinions about this matter, but fairly early on in the game, one of the fundamental questions is presented to us during one of the quests. Lud, one of the villagers of Puil, tired of seeing his family and fellow villagers despairing in their hunger, solitude, and overall abandonment, decides to offer himself as a sacrifice to the remnants of one of the old gods in exchange for agricultural fertility. We find him already in the middle of the act, and it's up to us to let him go ahead or stop him. Letting him proceed with the sacrifice seemed like the least evil of the two options, as Lud is a character who thinks everyone thinks he's useless and not very smart, and a couple people do act a bit condescendingly towards him. Even in the most optimistic of cases, it seemed very cruel to let him live when he wanted to serve everyone. It's not that it's about advocating for martyrdom as a form of resistance. We should value life. At the same time, there's a point of no return for people like Lud, in which living with the guilt of having had the opportunity of doing something relevant for the people he cared about and not being able to becomes even more of a living hell. Participating in these kinds of decisions is a constant in Dread Delusion. Deciding between different kinds of misery or just plain death is the climax of many a quest, and indeed even the main one. We find a kingdom in which people have attained immortality but at the same time barely live, dormant in a limbo of existence. No urgency in their actions and actually fighting to be able to die again. This urgency versus conformism dichotomy is interestingly elaborated when we find out some of the most relevant actors in the history of the kingdom have been mortals, humans. One of those is us. Going back to the conflict between the Union that now rules over a great part of the territory and the previous gods demanding sacrifice, there's somehow parallel here to that urgency and conformism. The explicit violence of the gods' terms versus the apparent normality of hierarchical mediocrity with the Union. The main quest of the game is, under the command of the Apostatic Union's army, find Vela Kaluz, or Vela Kaluz, a rebel who seeks an artifact that Vela believes will be able to change the very fabric of reality and creating a better world, whereas many other people believe it might actually destroy the world, or what's left of it. The risk is certainly there. After all, it is true that Vela aims to change reality itself through ciphers, the language that allows people to manipulate what's around them. It's magic. The Apostatic Union changed the world. If for the better, it's hard to tell. But they're very comfortable in the context they've created. You don't see anyone interested in moving beyond to an era where everyone can live their best lives. And maybe that's impossible. Vela, however, presents an opportunity for this, and their antagonistic reaction leaves a bit to be desired. During our travels, we reunite some of Vela's previous companions, and we start to ponder if what Vela wants might actually make sense. The game offers us some opportunities to make this clear to other characters. No one really knows what might happen if Vela achieves her goals, but literally no one is interested in at least trying to find out. The order from the start of the game is to stop Vela no matter the cost. Vela is a bit of a character. Though inspiring in her ambition, we find out her fundamental reasons for pursuing the cradle, the artifact, are mostly personal. She wants to revive her sister, who has been long dead, as we find out through some detective work in some side quests. Instead of letting her go through with the plans though, If we so desire to support Vala's plan, it is us who must make the final decision to change the universe. In the end, the game does not validate Vala's selfish goal by letting her do the deed. It has to be us. So what the hell happens if we decide to rewrite the very fabric of existence? What Vala has been up to in reality is engaging in communicating with an angel that she has found. The angel is an interdimensional being of higher level of conscience and power than the gods of our world. The order of magnitude of their intellect in relation to us is the same we have with insects. For that reason, it's not straightforward for humans to communicate with the angel. We are barely able to, however, because the angel, being an interdimensional being native to the space in between universes or something like that, has only access to a fraction of its power when existing in the world of Dread Delusion. Eventually, we are able to maintain a basic conversation with the angel through connecting both our consciousness and by communicating through the mind, as speech and language wouldn't make any sense. We are able to agree on being assimilated by the angel and freeing their power in our world. And this would be one of the endings. What happens is that everyone in our world gets a tiny fraction of the angel's power, being able to achieve a level of freedom and consciousness unheard of before. Any regular person attains the power on par with the greatest cipher wizards to have ever lived. Misery is not only eradicated, it's not that in the end people have their basic problems solved and are able to live decent lives. What actually happens is that we go much beyond that, attaining some sort of next level of human existence where all problems are made obsolete. People are made immortal. Through the radical actions of Vala and ourselves, it's not that we gave back to the people their means of sustenance. We did much more than that. By breaking through the apparent mediocre stability, we go beyond the human condition to the next stage where we can find new problems to solve, and maybe one day, hopefully, these too will become obsolete, and a new revolution will be needed, because history never ends. It is in motion forever.